I'm Aria Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. We are back with WNBA Stocks, where Owen Pence and I check the market in the WNBA as of today, June 22nd. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. Are you looking to get tickets for the WNBA season? Thanks to our sponsor, TickPick, you don't have to worry. The original no-fee ticketing site and official ticketing partner of the WNBA champion, Chicago Sky. Use the link tickpick.com/Winsidr for all your upcoming ticket purchase needs for the WNBA, NFL, NBA, or any other event. That's tickpick.com/Winsidr. We're back with WNBA Stocks, where we check the pulse on the market. It's June 22nd. I'm here with Owen Pence. Last week when we checked in, our up teams were New York and Seattle, with Dallas and Atlanta on the downswing. We'll start this week off with a feel-good story, I guess you could say, with our up teams. We'll start it off with Minnesota, and I'll go first. It's been a new day, a dawn of a new era. It's the Nikolina Milic era in Minnesota, and Milic has just been on a tear. She, as she might not be putting up the gaudy numbers that we've seen, game to game, but I feel like she deserves credit. I know Mitchell Hansen from Winsidr, our beat reporter for the Lynx, is working on a amazing article on her that's going to be coming out shortly. And I just think what she's provided, especially in the absence of Sill, especially in the absence of Fee, which is a whole thing we can get onto for a very long time about how we haven't even talked about how this team is missing Fee. But losing by 1 point against Vegas, a team where it really could have gone anywhere. This team's been on the downswing for basically the whole season, except that one Sparks win where we thought maybe they were turning a corner. But when we were doing show notes and we were chatting about this before we hopped on and record, I was saying, like, finally this team went from a team that looked incompetent to now being a competent team that just doesn't know how to win. I saw a stat line go in this Phoenix game last night that they pulled off a nice victory. That they were on a 5-game losing streak. In the last 4 of those games, the combined total score that they lost by was 7. I think that's a really good sign. We've seen this team compete all the way until those last final moments where you're going to have an error here, you're going to have an unforced turnover here, a few shots aren't going to fall in. But winners find ways to win in those situations. A sentiment that has been kind of echoed with the Chicago Sky and the Connecticut Sun this season as they try and get atop, the power rankings with the Las Vegas Aces just looking so good. Any thoughts on the Lynx? And I know I started off with Milic because I just feel like I wanted to give her the hype, but I mean, Jessica Shepard had what was it, like a 22-19 and 8 game. What was it? Some of the other players are just going off also. Mo Jeff had a crazy game the other night, and they finally get the victory against Phoenix in Phoenix, which I feel like they kind of got that monkey off their back, finally pulling off of like a decisive victory. Not a game that went down to the last minute and there was questions and someone had to hit a big shot, but like from the beginning of the fourth, they continued to extend that. I mean, the whole second half just looked like a different Minnesota Lynx team than we've seen all season. And now it will be quiet. Owen, the Minnesota Lynx.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The feelings are positive finally. I mean, we've talked about the Lynx a few times this year and it's been on the stock down segment, of course. And so it's exciting and fun to have a reason to kind of gush about this team right now. You mentioned Shepard's game, 22 points, 19 rebounds, 6 assists against the Aces. I mean, come on. And it's not just her. I think that the thing that struck me is that different people are stepping up, right? Like what we saw in those first handful of weeks is that Shepard was playing pretty well and she was really alone. Occasionally someone else would step up, have a big game. Caleb McBride, comes back from overseas and plays so well in that first game against the Sparks, which they did win. I can't even remember. It feels like so long ago now. All I remember was the Derek Fisher gaffe at the end of it. But but it seemed like a common theme for Minnesota was that maybe one player would play well and they'd still get crushed because you just can't survive in the WNBA with only one player playing well. And what we're seeing now is a lot of people stepping up. I mean, I think Kayla's been great and one of my favorite players in the league. 18 points last night to lead the team against Phoenix. I think another player I want to mention, someone who in Dallas really struggled. I mean, Mo Jefferson, was just not the right fit for that team. And anytime she'd play, and it seemed like she got a lot of chances with the Wings starting. And it was like, why are they starting her? They've got better options on their bench, and it wasn't clicking. Mariah Jefferson comes to Minnesota, and it's one of those things, kind of weird, kind of like with Lay last year, where Cheryl Reeve, doesn't have a point guard to start the season, and then someone just comes in, a handful of games into the regular season, into the schedule, and kind of saves the team. And I think that's what we're seeing here is now things are falling into place. Okay, Kayla doesn't have all the attention on her, and Shepard's playing really well. They just got Natalie Achanwa back. She scored 12 points, 6 boards in 18 minutes last night. I mean, this team finally seems like it has a couple different players that they can rely on. Damiris Dantas, another one, a huge piece who, was out for the whole season and is back now, 8 and 7 in 22 minutes last night. So they've got players now stepping up, and it hasn't been this way this season until very recently for Minnesota.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I just want to touch on with Mojef that I feel like we might have to do a whole podcast on just to talk about, bring Rachel on, is just, the cool thing about her is I always wonder with Lay and with Mojef, like, is it just that so many other teams are in a different situation, doing a different style of ball, or is it something else? Because I completely agree. The situation of Mojef and Lay in different spots, in different teams, you sat there and you start to question, is there a spot for them in this league? Not because they're not talented enough to be in this league, but just the direction of where the game's going and how they've been playing and their style of play. Mojef has the tools. We've seen her be deadly from three. Um, the question is just more so, like you said, can other players step up? Who's your up team this week?
Up team this week, the defending champion Chicago Sky. I don't know if you guys heard, but last night something rather dramatic happened. You may have turned off the game thinking, oh, same old Aces, just out here giving the Sky nightmares in the first half. And the Chicago Sky, the stock has to be up if you complete the greatest comeback in WNBA history, which is what we saw. And it wasn't just that. They were down 28 points last night to the first place Las Vegas Aces on the road. They won by 9, 104-95. This team, has all its pieces back now, and I think we're seeing kind of just how scary they are going to be. I think that sometimes we can get ahead of ourselves, and understandably so, in kind of crowning a new favorite early into the season. And I'm not saying Las Vegas didn't deserve it. We'll talk a little bit more about Las Vegas, which is a little teaser for the rest of the show. Whoa, Las Vegas not in the upstock segment.
Couldn't be. Couldn't we must have made a mistake there, Owen.
Couldn't be. This is invalid. Cancel the podcast. No, but Chicago was kind of, flying under the radar, I think. Everyone wanted to talk about Vegas. They're the hot new thing. And again, Vegas deserves it. They've been amazing this year. But James Wade knows better than anyone. Candace Parker knows better than anyone that you just have to get to the playoffs with all your players healthy and start to find a groove, and that's when you want to peak. They went 16-16 last year, and then they won the finals, and they won the finals in rather dominant fashion. So you look at this group and okay, they're not playing maybe as well as they could be playing. The win-loss record this year is way better than it was last year at a similar juncture of the season, but they're not winning games by a lot. The point differential isn't great for what we'd expect such a stacked roster to be. Who cares? I mean, we saw it in the closing stretches last night where this team has so many weapons. You look at the scoring. I mean, a huge game for Sloot last night, 25 points, 8 assists to lead the team in both stats. But look at the assist numbers up and down the roster. Julie Alman, 6 assists. 7 assists for Quigley. 6 assists for Emma Mieseman. 4 for Candace Parker. 3 for Ka. Like, this team is sharing the ball and just doesn't really care who scores. And now they're at a point where they go, 10 deep with players that they feel really comfortable playing. We talk about Rebecca Gardner, someone who's in her 30s and is a rookie and has been grinding and grinding and grinding, waiting for this opportunity. And she's been one of the most efficient players in the league this year. Didn't have a huge game last night, but I mean, now she's, the ninth person off the bench, something like that. The depth is kind of staggering considering that they had to, lose Diamond DeShields and Stephanie Dolson this offseason. They retooled in a really, really impressive way. I've already talked about how I think James Wade doesn't get enough credit as a general manager. But I mean, let's throw the credit to the players because they are balling right now. Kalia Copper obviously winning Eastern Conference Player of the Week, starting to round back into form, and just couldn't be more impressed given the fact that she truly has no offseason. I mean, we talk about these players playing year round. She's just going from one finals to another and back again, and not really missing a beat. But I mean, this team as a whole, and I think especially the front court, is so formidable. Emma Mieseman playing at an all WNBA level on both ends of the floor, and really is just the signing of the offseason. I mean, to get Emma Mieseman in a year when you thought that you were going to have to sacrifice some things in free agency because of the cap. And then all of a sudden you get a finals MVP to add to a roster of 2 other finals MVPs. The Sky got to be feeling incredible about where they're at right now.
They got to be in. Yeah, I don't even have a good pun. I was hoping to have a good pun for that one. Um, yeah, completely agree. Like this team is showing the variety of weapons they have. They're showing the depth. I think we all kind of had to pump the brakes on worrying about them, not just because of what you mentioned, Owen, which is completely legitimate, which is get to the playoffs healthy. It's anybody's game. But the other aspect is just the retooling that they did. They lost out on some athletic ability by losing Diamond Shields. There's not many players who are going to fill that, but they found other ways to kind of, I don't want to say patchwork, but everyone chips in just a little bit. And then you add Emma Mieseman and Julie Alamont. Like this team, once they fully find their flow, once they fully get comfortable playing with each other, because there are a bunch of players who have played with each other in different forms, some in the W, some overseas, some national teams, but none of them have all played together for James Wade. And that's where it kind of comes together is like, okay, it's going to take some time, but once they get going, are we going to see the best? And look, you can look to the Las Vegas Aces of the past few years and say, "Oh, just because they have a talented roster doesn't mean they're going to be good." You're right. But the way that this roster is constructed, everybody gets the best out of themselves, and can facilitate for the others to get the best out of themselves. I just think it's a really scary roster. It was nice to see because I like parity. I don't want anybody to run away with it. And if we learned anything over the past few years, it's you need to peak at the right time. As you said, Owen, peaking too early is bad. A la Connecticut Sun last year. Peaking too early is not what you want to do. I speak to coaches, I speak to GMs and players, and they always mention do not peak too early and don't overreact. Like reassess when you get halfway through the season, and then you can start to focus on that uphill climb to get to the peak. I just want to remind everyone who doesn't know, Winsidr has been hosting WNBA watch parties using a cool new platform called Playback. We're all able to watch the game together, so there's no spoilers. We've been doing some fun giveaways of vintage WNBA jerseys, posters, and WNBA Top Shots are coming too. It's free to sign up, and it really just takes 2 minutes. The link is getplayback.com. That's getplayback.com/room/Winsidr. We'll be on tomorrow, Thursday, and I believe we decided we're going to be doing the Phoenix Mercury versus Minnesota Lynx in Minnesota. It was a fun one last time. Hopefully it'll be another good one. And it's a free one, I believe. It's a Facebook game, which means anybody can watch. All right, let's talk down teams, Owen. You can go first on this one. I feel like I'm going to get wrung out for what I'm going to pick, so I'll let you go first. You kind of alluded to it.
Yeah, might as well, right? We can't not talk about it any longer. Stock down this week. Gasp. Insert gasp here. Las Vegas Aces. Okay, look. let me defend this real quick. The team is 13-3. So we're grading on a curve here. The stock is not really down in any meaningful sort of way, but sometimes this exercise can be difficult because it's like a lot of teams showed a lot of positive things since we last recorded 9 days ago. So we're looking for something a little different, and really this is an excuse to talk about a few issues that are starting to creep in when you're looking at Las Vegas that really weren't there when they just came out of the gate totally on fire, and it was entirely positive. You couldn't even utter a single criticism, because what was there to criticize? The team was just perfect. The Aces still got to be feeling great. Ultimately, they're on a great trajectory. There's no reason for panic, obviously, and this isn't an overreaction to the fact that they just blew an absolutely massive lead at home to the defending champs last night. That's not really the reason I'm bringing them up here. What I want to talk about is the sustainability of having 5 players play essentially every single key minute. I mean, it's gotten a little bit out of hand, I think, where this bench is just not providing anything. Last night in the loss to Chicago, Teresa Plaisance, 10.7 rebounds in 13 minutes. Asia Shepherd played 12 minutes, scored 5 points. Kia Stokes played 8 minutes, 0 points, 1 rebound. That was the bench production for yesterday. That was actually a good game for their bench. 15 points. They had a game earlier in the week where the bench didn't score, and as amazing as the starting 5 unit has been, and for as long as we had been talking about under Bill Laimbeer wanting to see Asia at the 5, wanting to see Dearica Hamby in the starting lineup, wanting to see this super spacey, super dynamic offensive lineup. Well, guess what? We're seeing it. It's just as amazing as we all thought it was going to be, but it's also all we're seeing. I think that the fact that Raquana Williams has missed almost the whole season, save for a teeny little bit of action, has been really meaningful, because she was the one player that was kind of slated to come off the bench and be like a real rotation piece. Like, Plaisance has actually been great. I've been really impressed. I don't want to really knock anyone on the bench, and I don't want to knock the rookies either. I think Shepard's got a super bright future. I really liked what I saw from Kirsten Bell when she played the fourth quarter of a blowout. Like, they have some players, but clearly Becky Hammond feels like they're not ready for the moment right now. And because that's the case, we're starting to approach some worrisome, minute totals. I think that Hammond does deserve a lot of credit. Asia Wilson's minutes have been pretty under control. They're not crazy at all. But Jackie Young is playing a lot. Jackie Young's playing a lot for someone who just missed, 12 days or whatever it was with an ankle injury, who played a long overseas season. And she can handle it. I mean, her conditioning is amazing. And she's done so much and worked so hard to be ready for this moment. And I mean, she's just couldn't be having a better season. But she played 37 minutes last night. Plum played 36. Jackie came back in that first game back from injury against Dallas earlier this week, or I guess it was last week now on Tuesday, and played 35 minutes or whatever it was right off the bat. these are games where you'd really like to be stealing a little more rest. We just talked about it with Chicago, right? Peaking at the right time and kind of, James Wade rested Candace Parker fully healthy, rested her down the stretch of a super close game in New York a few weeks ago. And when I asked him about it after the game, he said, no injury, nothing. We just want to, we've been playing her a lot. She's got older legs, in the grand scheme of a professional basketball player. We just want her to be fresh for when it matters. And I do worry that the Aces might not be so fresh when it matters because they had in some ways a disaster off season. I mean, they kind of didn't have a GM there for a minute, and their highest pick, their 8th overall pick, didn't even make the roster, and there's a lot of question marks in terms of what happened this off season past the obvious win of signing Becky Hammon and bringing her in as coach. And so I think some of these issues are creeping in. They're also 5th in defense right now, which again is not a disaster by any means. But Becky's been preaching defense all season. She says when we play defense well, we win. They're starting to show some cracks in the armor here because the defense was not great last night. Chicago was whipping the ball around and kind of scoring at will during that comeback. And you got to wonder if part of that is tired legs because these starters are just taking on too much responsibility.
I completely agree with you. I would say we're not in panic mode, but if you're looking at the dashboard on the control center, there's a light blinking under caution, because everything you just said, right? And it's not just one of them, it's when you combine all of them. You can't peak too early. You can't be sitting here, saying, "Oh, we have such great players, it doesn't matter." I understand Jackie and Kelsey Plum want to be running it, playing 40 minutes a game. You cannot allow that as the coach. You have to step in. The more concerning thing for me is, like, I love that they're getting Asia her rest, and I think that's kind of their mindset is when it comes down to it in the playoffs, we're going to be needing Asia at her best, so we'll rest her a little bit more now compared to other players. My concern is Sydney Colson. I mean, it's other players that, in my mind at least, should be established enough to be getting minutes and giving these players rest. To what you said about the Chicago Sky, like, good coaches are aware of that ability, and I think James Wade got a good reminder of it last season, so it's a little bit easier for him. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, in the history books, when we look back at this team, are we going to say they should have had a GM before a week before the draft? Are we going to say that, you know, Becky played the starters too much in early on in the season? Or are we going to say none of that mattered because this team is so skilled and was just so high flying that they were able to pull it off? I don't know yet. I'm just starting to get more and more concerned as the season goes on. I mean, a 1-point win over Minnesota the other night, which granted is because Jessica Shepard took it to the hole, put up a contested shot against Asia Wilson. I don't know why she contested it because they were down 3 and that was ball game. So maybe, saying a 1-point game versus Minnesota isn't the full picture, but I still think it's showing enough. There's parity in this league, and the Aces are no longer, uh, hop, skip, and a jump ahead of the rest of the league. At least, not currently. If they're going to be playing a 6 deep roster, we saw how that helped Connecticut get a championship in the past few years. So I don't think it's going to help for Vegas. My down team, and maybe I'm going to get some heat from this. So I'll start off with saying free BG, because that's kind of the crux of it, in my opinion. You go into this season, we've talked about this a lot with Phoenix, with the uncertainty. BG was the best player in the playoffs. The individual player, in my mind, the best player in the playoffs and going into the playoffs. She was not the MVP because John Quell had the most ridiculous season of the season last year. But the way BG was playing, it became abundantly clear to anybody that the time was now. BG was ready for that next leap to becoming that MVP caliber player. She was finally living up to the potential, and to the skill set that she has. But I think we've kind of learned what this team is and what their capability is without having Brittany Griner on their current roster, on their, starting 5. They're on a 2-game losing streak, which isn't that rough. It's the longest in the league, which is, I guess, a good sign for the teams around the league. But I mean, at the end of the day, Skylar Diggins-Smith keeps elevating her game, but there's a limitation of what this roster can be when it's built out, and you have, Tina Charles. We know what we're going to get from her. She's playing good, but it's not going to be, filling BG's shoes. Diana Taurasi is playing pretty good for her age. Not going to hate on that. And then you got Diamond, who's been playing pretty good, in Shea Petty. But there's a ceiling of where this roster can go without having BG at the helm. And I think we're seeing this more and more. We're going to see, they have the players that on random nights are just going to go off offensively, and they're going to be lackluster defensively. And I just don't think that this team, as annoying as it is, as much as it sucks, I just think we're at a downswing right now. And we're going to see them float up again at some point, but they're kind of where we expect them to be, on a playoff bubble team at best right now.
Yep, I totally agree. Free Brittany Griner, bring her home. The story was just so tragic this week about
Oh my
how
god.
they had a call set up for her and her wife to talk for the first time on their wedding
In
anniversary.
over
And
130 days.
I know. It just, people have to be better and try harder, because it's just absolutely ridiculous at this point. So sad. So that really is all that matters here. And from a basketball standpoint, what you said is entirely accurate. This is a team that is built to revolve around its best player, who is Brittany Griner, and she's not here right now. And so, really, what they have been able to do, I mean, from an individual perspective, is pretty remarkable. I think Skylar Diggins-Smith is just having another amazing season in a career of amazing seasons, and really just playing so well and kind of keeping this team in the playoff race, where they kind of could have faded out of contention at this point, if not for Skylar's brilliance. Shea Petty, someone who I mentioned on this podcast in previous weeks, who's just been so essential for them. So I mean, they have a lot of people playing really well. Seeing Diamond DeShields, start. She's not all the way back, but after just such a brutal, you can't call it an injury. It was way worse. Everyone should check out the I think it was Outside the Lines piece on Diamond DeShields, recovery over the past couple years. It's really heartbreaking stuff, but also just kind of incredible stuff if you're looking at her perseverance and her will to kind of get back and keep playing this game she loves. So I think from these individual perspectives, it's all really positive. They've just shown a lot of grit and toughness, but like you said, it's just not realistic for this team to be contending in any meaningful way without Griner and with Taurasi at the age that she's at. I mean, Diana's going to have her amazing offensive game still, because she's one of the all-time greats. But on a consistent basis, this team just doesn't have it. They're ninth in defense. They're seventh in offense. They're going to be a contender for the final playoff spot, or the seventh or eighth seed. But what we're seeing around the league the last 9 days since we've recorded is really indicative of the parity that you just mentioned, where okay, Minnesota's winning games now. Okay, New York is hanging with the best teams and starting to look really good. Hey, Indiana stole a win. We have essentially 12 competitive teams right now. Obviously, some of them, struggle on some nights and look really rough, but ultimately these are 12 teams where as cliche as it sounds, there's no free games on the schedule. There's no easy games on the WNBA schedule. And for Phoenix at 6-11 right now, it's going to be a grind to slide into the playoffs, which is kind of where we all expected them to be. And obviously, because of circumstances out of their control, now that's looking way more like a question mark.
Yeah, well, let's hop on over to my favorite segment, Stock Watch. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. My team for Stock Watch is the Washington Mystics. I mean, no shocker, no surprise. I feel like they are the one that everyone kind of has their eye on. Is EDD playing? Is she not playing? We know, you know. I guess my question, and why I feel like their stock's going to be up and down, is more so just, you know, Is their stock going to be down when she's not playing? Is their stock going to be up when she is playing? I think it's a little bit more uncertainty, a little bit more murky than that. Obviously, when EDD's playing, um, she is that player. She is that person who can lift a mediocre team to a championship contender. She can lift a non-playoff team to a playoff team. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a lot more than that. They want to win a championship. They want to win another championship. And for them to do that, they're going to have to find consistency and continuity. And right now, they don't have either of those. You don't know what team's coming out. And I just think it's going to be fun to watch them. Maybe we'll get a better sense. I personally don't think we're going to get a sense of this team at any point during the year. And I do expect them to make the playoffs and then EDD to play a little bit more consistently, but I don't know if we have a big enough picture of what this team looks like when EDD does play to understand if they have a flow. They've struggled defensively, looked horrible in a couple games defensively, and looked like, confused bystanders offensively in a few of these games without EDD. So I think it's more than just EDD, not EDD. Who's your stock watch team?
My stock watch this week is the Los Angeles Sparks, a team who we didn't have a great picture of after they fired Derek Fisher because we just haven't seen him play very much. They only had I think they've played fewer games than anyone else in the league, and had a huge win last night, a 2-point victory over Washington, who you were just talking about, a big game. And we're really going to see what they're made of now, in this post Derek Fisher era, with a game against Chicago on Thursday, at Seattle on Saturday, and then home for Las Vegas on Monday. I mean, that is the gauntlet right there. Those are three of the best teams in the league. And even if they don't win those games, I just want to see what the team is looking like now. I'm kind of excited to keep monitoring them. I think that like the biggest story here that no one is talking about this year, and it's just easy to gloss over because this is a player who has won MVP, who's done everything, won a championship, and has nothing to prove. Nneka Ogwumike is just unbelievably good at basketball. I mean, just
Oh yeah.
so incredible. Never, I mean, I don't want to say never, but have we ever seen such a consistent presence on the court from every perspective? We're talking leadership, we're talking defense, we're talking offense. I mean, she just year after year, it doesn't matter what teammates are around her. It doesn't matter if there's turbulence in the locker room, whatever. She is going to come out and be one of the best 5 to 10 players in the league every single year if she's healthy. It's been a joy to watch her this season, even as, the Sparks have really had to deal with some turbulence, as I just mentioned. And last night in the win, 29 minutes, 21 points, 6 rebounds. I mean, just a classic game from her. So I want to see what the Sparks are made of here in this brutal 3-game patch against 3 of the best teams in the league. I'm excited to watch.
Me too. Well, we'll be back next week with WNBA Stocks, where myself, Arya Schwartz, and Owen Pence discuss the WNBA market.